Hey guys, my name is Iasmina and welcome back to my channel. So you may have already seen my top 10 best fantasy books video that I did a few weeks back. On the same note, I would like to do a few more videos focusing on different genres, and today this is one of them. So this will be my top 10 best YA contemporary books. After fantasy, YA contemporary is definitely my most read genre. I write in it as well, and so I also use it as a kind of learning method to my own writing, and so I've read a lot of it. I enjoy most of it, but these 10 are really the best I have read and I love dearly and I would reread forever. So I hope I can give you some good recommendations today, so let's just get straight to it. At number 10 we have a very popular YA contemporary author, and that is Rowell, and the book I'm going to talk about is Eleanor in Park. This is the first book I've read by Rainbow, and it is still my favorite that she's written. This is a very sweet and funny romance story between Eleanor and Park, two outcasts, bound together by the same bus ride. Eleanor is the new girl in town. She doesn't quite fit in yet. She comes from a very abusive household and she doesn't really know what to do with herself. And on her first day of school, she goes on the school bus, and there she sees Park, who is this kind of cute Asian boy who sits with his headphones on and listens to this really cool music, but is very shy and doesn't really talk to her. And so she sits next to him, and from then on, things happen. I thought this was a very well told story. It was a very cute romance. I love both of these characters. It was very well written, and I think the ending is also really, really sweet. And I would highly recommend this book to anyone who likes YA romances. At number 9 we have a recent read of mine actually. This is This Song Will Save Your Life by Layla Sales. I've definitely heard a lot about this book before I read it. I've heard about it for a few years now, but the reason I finally decided to pick it up was because I knew it was about music. And the contemporary book I'm currently drafting, the one I'm almost done drafting, is also about music, and so I wanted something to kind of inspire me while I was writing it. And this not only did that, but it also made me fall in love with the book itself. It's a great book, guys. This follows Elise, I guess, a 16-year-old girl who discovers her love of music, more specifically of DJing, when she stumbles across this underground dance club in her town that she never really knew was there. No one really knows it was there. And then she befriends the DJ who performs at these events, and he teaches her how to DJ, and she finds out that she's quite good at it. Again, this is a very sweet and funny read, all about the love of music and really cool indie underground type of music. And dancing, a lot of dancing. I really enjoyed this book, and like I said, I love any book dealing with music, and this is one of the best I have read. At number 7 we have a book with many awards on the cover, as you can see, and that is Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe by this author, who I'll put on the screen because I don't know how to pronounce it and I don't want to say it wrong. This is an incredibly sweet story between the friendship that develops between two very different boys. Dante, who is very articulate and creative, he loves poetry and art and loves expressing himself in different ways, and then Ari, who is none of those things, and he comes from a Mexican immigrant family. His brother is in prison and he's dealing with a lot of issues. The two are neighbors and they start forming a friendship, and that is all I will say. This has amazing dialogue. It's mostly dialogue, but it's so well written and so realistic and just sweet, and I adore it. Very quick read as well. You can read this in a day, and I would highly recommend you pick it up. Okay, the number 7 book on my list, I'm a bit unsure of why it is so high on my list and why it is higher than some of these other books I've just spoken about. But when I sat down and made this list, I knew that this had to be in it. But anyway, let's talk about the book. That is Will Grayson by John Green and David Levithan. They each write consecutive chapters from two points of views by two boys named Will Grayson. Again, I'm a little unsure as to why this is so high on my list, but I just remember enjoying this so much. This made me laugh out loud so many times, and the only reason I'm unsure about it is because usually, from my experience, books written by two different authors are not always so cohesive. They're really fun, but they're not necessarily the best way that story could have been told, if you get what I mean. This, for some reason, I just instantly loved. It's such a fun story. It also contains a live production musical, if that's your thing. But I feel like I don't really want to say anything more about this book, but just pick it up and try it for yourself, because I think you might really enjoy it. At number 6 is a book that has blown up. This is the debut novel of this author, and it is, I think, the most hyped up book in history, and not only is it hyped, it is the most well-received debut I have seen in years. Been on the New York Times bestseller list, I think, for an entire year, or something ridiculous. It's everywhere. You might already know what I'm talking about, but that is The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. I am still in awe at how well this book is doing, and how incredibly famous Angie is now. It's been turned into a movie. The movie is not out yet, but it will be really soon. And I mean, it completely deserves it. I'm not saying it doesn't, it completely deserves it. It's a fantastic book, which is why it's on my list. But this book was inspired by the Black Lives Matter movement. The main character, Star, kind of lives two very different worlds. One in the poor black neighborhood that she's born in, and then she goes to a very private school full of white people. Those two worlds to her are very, very different. And then she goes to a party with her best friend, and then her best friend is shot unrightfully by a policeman. He was unarmed, he wasn't attacking the policeman in any way, but he is shot dead. This is a pretty heavy-handed book. It deals with a lot of heavy, important topics, so please pick it up. Keep it on that bestseller list because it deserves it. So I mentioned in the previous book that I thought David Levithan is quite good. The next book on my list at number 5 is Every Day by David Levithan. So this book is a bit different from, I think, all the others in my list because it's not only a YA contemporary book, but it also has a bit of magical realism to it, which I don't think any of the others on my list do. And by magical realism, I mean this is a book about a boy who every morning wakes up in the body of a different person. He lives a different person's life every single day, and at some point in one of the days he meets a girl that he really likes. And of course you can see the trouble, because the next day he could wake up on the other side of the planet and never find his way back to her. So, that's interesting. I thought this book was so well executed. An idea like this can go so many different ways. I think it's an idea that would be quite difficult to actually write, but I think David Levithan has done an incredible job. It was funny and heartwarming and inclusive and diverse and wonderful. It showed so many facets of life from all around the world, and I thought it was wonderful, and I think you should try it. Book number 4 is also a very popular movie, and that is The Perks of Being a Wallflower by Chbosky, I think. This was one of the first YA contemporary books I've ever read, and one of the reasons I fell in love with the genre in the first place. The Perks of Being a Wallflower came out in 1999, so I think it's actually the oldest book on my list. But this is a book about a freshman in high school called Charlie, who writes his experiences in a journal, and so this book is actually told in diary format. I was actually flipping through and I noticed that I had underlined a quote. I never usually do that anymore. I think I used to mark my favorite quotes, but I don't do that anymore, so I actually think this is quite a good quote, and so I want to read it out to you. This says, "And in that moment, I swear we were infinite." This is a very good book, and I think anyone who reads YA contemporary has to read this. But this is one of those coming-of-age stories that a lot of people will relate to. I definitely related to Charlie in so many ways. Almost there, guys. We're now in my top 3. So, at number 3 is another book with a movie adaptation. The movie adaptation has just come out, actually. I haven't seen it yet because it doesn't come out here in Denmark until May or June, I think. Again, this is one of these books and movies that I think are incredibly important right now. And anyway, you will know what I mean when I tell you about this book. This is Simon and the Homo Sapiens Agenda by Becky Albertali. This is one of those books where I just could not put it down. I just wanted to come back time and time again and read about Simon. He is so witty and funny and my kind of character, and his story is incredibly sweet and heartwarming, and again, I think incredibly important. Because yes, Simon is gay, and he's not quite out of the closet just yet, and he's exchanging emails with this wonderful boy called Blue. He doesn't know who Blue is. Blue is kind of a secret identity. But someone at Simon's school found out about his and Blue's correspondence, and they are trying to blackmail him into revealing to the entire school that Simon is gay. And so this is a story about him dealing with all of that and coming to terms with his sexuality and his relationship with Blue. It deserves all of the praise it's getting, all of the awards it's gotten. The movie looks fantastic. I cannot wait to see it. And we need more stories like this. Please read it. Read it! Read it! Alrighty, at number 2, this is a book. Can you guess? With another great movie adaptation. A lot of these books have been made into movies now that I think about it, which is fantastic. They should be, but I just realized how many times I've said that this is a book with a really good movie adaptation. Anyway, This is true. This is Paper Towns by my favorite YA contemporary author, John Green. So I've read everything that John Green has ever put out. I knew him as a YouTuber before I read any of his books. I've been following the Vlogbrothers since YouTube started, since the Vlogbrothers started. I love both John and Hank Green, but this is a video about books, and John Green is primarily an author as well as being a YouTuber, and a very big YouTuber at that. We kind of owe them the entire concept of the YouTube community. They've done so much for this platform, but anyway, that's besides the point. Paper Towns. This is an incredibly important book to me because it inspired my first book, Hunting Vienna, in the sense of the dynamic between the main character and the love interest is kind of similar, and also this idea of a scavenger hunt, which is very prevalent in my book. I really love the main character, Quentin. He's very relatable, at least to me. And I think Margot is also quite interesting. But Margot is definitely one of these manic pixie girls. But I think it works really well in this book. It's my favorite of John Green's. Again, I've read all of his books. I love all of them, really. But I didn't really want to have too many John Green books on this list. I've already had 2 because Will Grayson, so... But obviously any John Green book is a fantastic YA contemporary book to read. But my personal favorite is Paper Towns, coming in at number 2. And finally, the big one, number 1, my favorite YA contemporary book of all time, I'll Give You the Sun by Jandy Nelson. This is the best YA contemporary book I've ever read. This is one of the best books in general I've ever read. This is an incredibly well-written story. I absolutely adore the writing in this, and I hope that one day I'm able to write as good as she does. This book is told in dual perspective of 2 twins, a boy and a girl, called Jude and Noah. It follows both the past and the present before a tragedy, a family tragedy, kind of splits them apart. They used to be incredibly close, and you see that in the beginning, and then they're kind of split apart by this tragedy, and you follow both of them in the future as they try to find out who they are. And again, it's a coming-of-age story. It's just, I don't know how to explain this book. It's wonderful. This book is kind of an ode to art, an ode to painting, an ode to creativity. This is also an LGBTQ story. The boy Noah falls in love with another boy, and their romance is one of the best I've ever read. I'm one of these people who loves reading about romances, but I never really get all giddy and excited about 2 characters falling in love with each other. But Noah and this other boy, oh my god, I was so there with them. It was so well done. Cannot recommend this enough. If there is one YA contemporary book you will read, please read this one. Read this book, because I guarantee you that even if you don't like other YA contemporary books, I think you will like this one. Read it. It's so good. So good. But anyway, guys, those are my top 10 best YA contemporary books. My favorite YA contemporary books. I love this genre. These are the best that I've personally read and reread. But I hope this will make you pick some of these books up, because I think they are top-notch books. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next Monday. Bye, guys!